Okay, so welcome to this deep dive crafted just for you.
Huh.
This one takes us into Marion Zimmer Bradley's The Mists of Avalon.
Oh,
And we've really immersed ourselves in some really key excerpts from it.
yeah.
And the aim here is to kind of really explore the powerful currents of belief,
Yeah.
the dynamics of power and the shifts in worldview that really drive this story.
Yeah.
So it's about kind of understanding, what makes these characters tick
Right.
and the forces that are shaping their world.
Yeah. And I think, it's so striking reading these excerpts is the tension
Hmm.
that's right there from the beginning around belief, right? Like
Right.
you have Igraine voicing her concerns about marrying those who follow other gods.
Right.
And Merlin offers this kind of fundamental insight that the world as they know it
Yeah.
is molded by what people believe in.
That's a pretty powerful idea, isn't it?
It is.
That this isn't just about, personal piety. It's like you said, this idea that,
Yeah.
that the world is shaped by these belief systems. And Merlin specifically points to the arrival of Christianity as
Okay.
a powerful pivot in time.
Right.
So it's not just another faith, it's this force that has the potential to reshape everything.
Yeah.
So how do you see that concept of belief shaping reality playing out,
Yeah.
beyond just their spiritual lives?
Think about, shared beliefs kind of solidify, you know,
Hmm.
social structures, right? Like
Hmm.
their understanding of who has authority,
Hmm.
what's right and wrong, even explanations for natural events.
Yeah.
All of this is tied to belief systems.
Right.
So the arrival of Christianity introduces this whole new set of beliefs
Yeah.
that inevitably are going to challenge that,
Yeah, totally.
and challenge the existing order. And that's going to be a big deal for people like Igraine and Merlin.
Yeah, absolutely. And this clash of beliefs, it's not just some abstract debate.
Right.
It immediately impacts Igraine's personal life, right?
Yeah.
And the prophecies that surround her. I mean, Vivienne's intense reaction to Igraine.
Yeah.
When she says that Gorloy's name isn't written in the stars
Right.
concerning Britain's future,
It's huge.
it's a huge moment.
It is a huge moment.
And what's interesting, too, is Vivienne's almost visceral response.
Yeah.
It really underscores just how deeply invested
Yes.
the priestesses are in their own vision of Britain's destiny.
Right.
So her pronouncement about Gorloy introduces this whole element of fate, right?
Yeah.
This sense that there's a predetermined path and,
Yeah.
and Igraine's current situation might not be.
Yeah.
Might not be the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
It makes you wonder, what does she see in the stars?
Right. What does she see exactly?
Yeah, and it also hints at this immense responsibility that
Yeah.
figures like Vivienne carry.
Yeah.
Later on, she, explains the old ways where the High King is bound to the land
Right.
and must make the great sacrifice in perilous times.
Yes.
So that's a pretty stark contrast to what's emerging with Christianity.
It is.
What do you make of that?
Well, I think what's interesting is exactly that contrast, right?
Right.
So in the old ways, the king's life
Yeah.
is directly linked to the land's well-being,
Right.
a very personal,
Right.
ultimate sacrifice.
Right.
Right? Christianity introduces this idea of priests
Mm-hmm.
offering sacrifices on behalf of the people.
Right. Yeah.
So it's this really different kind of,
Yeah, it shifts the power dynamic.
it shifts the power dynamic significantly, right?
Yeah.
It centralizes spiritual authority
Yeah.
and alters that direct relationship between
between the ruler and
the ruler and the divine,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And we also get a sense of that kind of deep personal commitment
Mm-hmm.
to the old ways when Vivienne talks about being prepared
Mm.
for sacrificial death herself.
Right. Yeah, that's
I-
intense. And that idea of personal stake and sacrifice, it seems to kind of ripple through the narrative.
Uh,
Even in Igraine's relationship with Gorloir,
Yeah.
we see a shift, right? She becomes aware of her own power over him,
Yeah.
almost as if, his mortality has kind of made him more vulnerable in their dynamic.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
I think that's a really interesting observation.
Yeah.
It's as if Igraine, maybe for the first time,
Yeah.
really grasps her own agency in the marriage.
Yeah.
And the emotional, weight that she carries for Gorloy
Hmm.
and this dawning awareness really coincides with this growing sense that their time together is finite,
Right.
and that kind of premonition hangs in the air, even before the,
Yeah.
the external threats really materialize.
Right, and then the focus kind of widens to this political arena,
Yeah.
with the selection of a new high king after Ambrosius's death,
Yeah.
becoming a real point of contention.
Hmm.
Log and Gorlai hold very different views
Yeah.
on whether Uther is the right choice. What does this division tell us about the state of Britain at this time?
I mean, I think it paints a picture of a really fragmented political landscape, right?
Yeah.
Loyalties are based on clan or personal ambition.
Right.
And there's clear resistance, particularly from the northern kings,
Mm.
to the idea of a strong central authority.
Right.
And then you throw in, Lot's desire
Right.
for the high kingship himself,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, that doesn't help.
That doesn't help. It really muddies the waters, right?
Yeah.
You got these power struggles when they really need some unity.
Yeah.
And I think Gorlo's kind of blunt assessment of Lot
Yeah.
and the threat of those northern kings seceding
Yeah.
really underscores how precarious things are.
Yeah. And then amidst all this political maneuvering, we
Right.
get this intriguing glimpse into something much older.
Yes.
This mysterious man speaks of a lost temple under the sea,
Right.
an oath tied to the one who brought fire to mankind, a clear nod to Prometheus. What do you make of this almost mythological interlude?
It's so interesting, right? I mean, it hints at this, this deeper, older understanding,
Yeah.
right? This valuing of enlightenment and individual agency, even at the cost of suffering.
Right, the suffering of the Wheel of Rebirth.
The suffering of the Wheel of Rebirth.
Yeah.
And the connection to Orion is really interesting too, right?
Yeah.
This constellation whose earthly temple is gone, but whose wisdom persists.
Right.
So it suggests that these ancient beliefs still have sway,
Yeah.
for some, and maybe offer an alternative framework
Right.
to the immediate kind of political and religious concerns.
It makes you wonder how this philosophical tension might influence their choices down the line.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And shifting back to Igraine's personal journey,
Yeah.
we see fate kind of woven in through Uther's dream,
Right.
from the previous spring.
Yeah.
This vivid memory of seeing her and the moonstone she wore,
Mm.
long before they actually meet. What's the significance of this?
I mean, it really emphasizes that sense of destiny around their connection.
Yeah.
The moonstone becomes this key symbol, linking his subconscious vision to Igraine's reality,
Right.
and suggests that maybe forces are at play beyond just, mere chance.
Yeah.
This weaving together of their paths that was maybe predestined.
Predestined, yeah.
Yeah.
And yet this seemingly fated connection becomes this spark for a very painful confrontation
Right.
between Igraine and Gorlois.
Yeah.
His jealousy and accusations reveal these deep fault lines in their marriage.
Mhm.
What do we learn about their relationship in this scene?
Well, I think Gorlois' reaction speaks volumes about his own insecurities,
Mm-hmm.
right? And maybe a subconscious awareness of that lack of deep connection with Igraine,
Right.
right? And his admission of feeling too old for her
Yeah.
lays bare his vulnerability.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact
Yeah.
that seeing her weep before Uther is what triggers that suspicion,
Yeah.
highlights his awareness of her unhappiness and his own inability to really win her affection.
Right. And he does say, I need you to forgive me. I need you to forgive me,
I think-
regardless of who's at fault.
Exactly.
So you can really see
Yeah, you see that turmoil.
that inner turmoil.
Yes.
The aftermath of this encounter marks a real shift in Igraine.
Right.
She becomes cold resolute
Yeah.
and ultimately decides to leave Gorlois.
Mm-hmm.
Her primary concern now focused on the safety of her daughter Morgaine.
Yes.
What motivates this decision, do you think?
Well, her security, I mean, any security she might have felt under Gorlois' protection is shattered.
Right.
And her immediate concern for Morgaine and this plan to send her to Vivienne
Mm-hmm.
on the Holy Isle, I think, reveals her desire to protect her daughter
Right.
from the unfolding events and maybe guide her towards the older traditions
Yeah.
that she herself is connected to.
Yeah, and there's that mention, too, about the Roman law
Right.
giving Gorlois power over Morgaine.
Yes.
So there's this real,
Urgency.
urgency to it.
Yeah.
Their departure is so heavy with unspoken emotions.
Yeah.
The insults from the shore, Gorlois' silent pallor,
Mm-hmm.
it paints this picture of a relationship beyond repair.
Yeah.
And then there's this added layer of intrigue, right?
Right.
Igraine's confusion about Uther allowing Gorlois to leave without opposition.
Yeah.
What do you think might be behind Uther's inaction?
That silence is really telling.
Mm-hmm.
I think it suggests that there are likely political strategies at play that Igraine just isn't privy to.
Right.
Maybe Merlin anticipates that Gorloy's departure serves a larger purpose
Right.
in their plans for the future of Britain.
It makes you wonder.
It does.
Yeah.
It hints at a level of manipulation and foresight
Yeah.
that goes beyond just the immediate personal drama.
Arriving at Tintagel, Igraine experiences this profound sense of isolation,
Right.
almost as if she's reached the very edge of the world.
Yeah,
This real place takes on this almost mythical quality,
it does.
especially when contrasted with Avalon. Why this stark contrast in her perception?
It underscores her emotional and physical separation from everything she's known.
Right.
Tintagel, a place of power and strategic importance, now feels remote and disconnected, mirroring her internal state.
Yeah.
And the contrast with Avalon, this idealized fairy kingdom,
Right.
highlights her longing for a place of spiritual resonance
Mm-hmm.
and maybe escape from the harsh realities
Right.
that she's facing.
Yeah, even in her brief absence, Igraine notices changes in her daughters.
Yeah.
Morgaine seems more mature.
Right.
Morgause displays a more overt interest in Gorlois.
Yeah.
What do these observations suggest about the evolving dynamics in Gorlois' household?
They give us this little window into the changing family dynamic.
Right.
I think Morgaine's quiet seriousness suggests this growing awareness,
Yeah.
maybe even an intuitive understanding of what's going on.
Right.
And Morgause's more, forward behavior and Gorlois' apparent indulgence,
Right.
hints at this developing relationship.
Yeah.
That could have, significant repercussions later on.
Yeah, for sure. And back at Tintagel, attempts to connect Morgaine with the old ways. Right. By suggesting she spend time with these shepherd women, yet she actively avoids Father Columba.
Yeah.
And her sharp dismissal of the priest
Right.
really reveals her deep-seated resistance to this new religion.
Yeah.
Despite her outward compliance, her inner world remains firmly rooted in the older traditions.
It does.
Doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, her actions speak volumes about that internal conflict. She might recognize the growing power of Christianity.
Yeah.
She might even participate in its rituals.
Yeah.
But her heart is clearly not in it.
Yeah.
Her attempt to involve Morgaine in those traditional ways of life
Right.
underscores her desire to pass on that heritage, while her avoidance and rejection of Father Columba highlight this deep mistrust of the new faith
Right.
and its representatives.
The harsh conditions within Tintagel.
Yeah.
The biting cold.
Right.
It really underscores Igraine's vulnerability and her fierce maternal instinct, to protect her daughters. And that moment where she almost falls while trying to get fire.
Right.
It seems small, but it's powerful. What does it tell us about her character?
Yeah, that moment reveals her resilience and her unwavering determination to care for her children,
Yeah.
even in difficult circumstances.
Right.
It's a testament to her strength,
Yeah.
and the primal force of that maternal love,
Yeah.
a drive that kind of transcends, those religious and political divides.
Totally. And despite her reservations, Igraine does eventually agree to attend Mass.
Right.
Which seems like a pragmatic move, acknowledging,
It does.
Christianity's growing influence.
Yeah.
But it seems like her own beliefs remain unchanged.
Yeah.
She's navigating a changing world, isn't she?
She is. She's adapting, recognizing that need to kind of engage with Christianity on some level,
Right.
even if her personal faith remains elsewhere.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily signal a true, conversion.
Not at all.
When Igraine and Uther finally meet again, there's this fascinating power dynamic at play.
Yeah.
Her initial fear gives way to his surprising observation
Right.
about her slightness and her youth,
Yeah.
and then that veiled hint of his own power. What's the undercurrent in this encounter?
It's charged, right?
Yeah.
I mean, his words are so carefully chosen,
Yeah.
right? Seemingly acknowledging her physical being,
Yeah.
but subtly asserting his dominance.
Right.
And the contrast between her vulnerability and his implied strength
Yeah.
really creates this palpable unease, and
Yeah.
it kind of foreshadows the complex power dynamics
Right.
that will define their future relationship.
Yeah, and we then shift to Vivienne and a younger woman,
Right.
likely Morgaine,
Yeah.
where Vivienne reassures her that the great goddess won't be angered by being called Mary.
Mm-hmm.
This along with her promise to, protect Morgaine from the nunnery
Yeah.
and bring her to Avalon because of her
Right.
Speaks volumes about Vivienne's strategy.
It does.
What's she trying to achieve?
She's demonstrating this really pragmatic approach to the rise of Christianity, right? Finding common ground.
Yeah.
Even if it's just in names.
Right.
Trying to ensure the survival of the old ways.
Yeah.
And even more importantly, her focus on Morgaine's sight.
Right.
And her determination to bring her to Avalon.
Yeah.
Underscores that commitment to nurturing that next generation of priestesses and preserving the traditions.
And then her attempts to foresee the future through scrying reveal these troubling fragmented visions involving Morgause, Lot Uther, and a dying child. The ambiguity of whether these are past or future events just adds to that sense of uncertainty.
Right.
What do you make of these visions?
It's unsettling, right?
Yeah.
These fragmented images point to this really turbulent future, potential conflicts, betrayals, loss, and the fact that she can't clearly discern the timeline, past, present, future, really underscores how prophecy can be so enigmatic, so difficult to interpret.
Yeah.
It creates this sense of foreboding.
Yeah. This is not going to be good.
Not going to be good.
Fueled by these visions, Vivienne resolves to confront Uther and Igraine. Despite Lot's pledge to support Uther, Vivienne strategically considers Morgause's sons as potential heirs, if Uther fails to produce one, revealing Morgause's own ambition.
Yeah.
So we're seeing some political maneuvering here.
Absolutely. Vivienne's playing the long game.
Yeah.
Thinking several steps ahead.
Yeah.
To ensure the future of Britain as she envisions it.
Right.
And her consideration of Morgause's lineage really highlights how intricate, that web is of potential alliances and rivalries.
Right.
And Morgause's ambition adds another layer to the succession dynamics.
Yeah. This is
complicated.
Complicated stuff.
Yeah.
And then this seemingly innocent conversation about Vivienne's mark as being vowed to the goddess leads to the younger woman, presumably Morgaine, asking these simple questions about the goddess and how that contrasts with her Christian upbringing.
Yeah.
So you can see that generational shift in belief that's happening.
Absolutely. It's just a beautiful little illustration of that clash, between the established Christian doctrine and the lingering presence of those older pagan beliefs.
Yeah. And you can
especially for someone raised within that tradition. And she's got this curiosity and but she's getting this other religious instruction.
Right.
So it creates this tension, at a personal level.
And later we see Morgaine taking on this role of a priestess.
Yeah.
Commanding respect and guiding Lancelot.
Right.
As they encounter this young girl seeking passage to Avalon. So even in this brief moment, we see her kind of stepping into her power.
She's stepping into it.
Right.
And her authority shines through.
Yeah.
Right. Even if she's maybe travel worn or not in ceremonial robes.
Yeah.
The glamour that she projects.
Yeah.
That aura of power and authority associated with her role.
Right.
Is enough to command respect and guide Lancelot.
Right.
So it really emphasizes
she's powerful.
Her growing confidence
and
connection to the power of Avalon.
And then the narrative transports us to this mysterious ritual on the tour. Right. Complete with ring stones, a maiden priestess named Raven, a great sword, the lighting of witch fire.
Yeah.
And at the center of it all, Vivienne seems to embody the goddess herself.
She does.
It's a very evocative scene.
It is. What do you make of it?
It's steeped in ancient symbolism.
Yeah.
Connecting them to the land's spiritual forces. The elements you mentioned, the stones, the sword, the fire.
All have deep significance in their traditions.
Right.
And Vivienne's central role, seemingly embodying the goddess, really highlights the performative and deeply spiritual aspects of their religious practices.
And then there's that moment where Raven lets out this almost otherworldly cry.
Yes.
Echoing across the tour.
It's chilling.
Yeah. And then that's followed by this profound silence.
Yes.
Of unseen initiates holding their breath.
Yeah.
It creates such a strong sense of this hidden, powerful world.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That sensory description is so effective.
Yeah.
Her cry acts as this bridge between the physical and spiritual realms.
Yeah.
And the subsequent silence hints at the presence of this dedicated, hidden community,
right,
committed to these ancient practices.
Right. So it really underscores this idea that there's a secret world coexisting alongside this more visible Christianized society.
Absolutely.
And we learn about the physical toll of these rituals as well. Morgaine experiences these lingering effects from the herbs.
Right.
Vivian is concerned about Raven after her prophecy.
Yeah.
So it reminds us that these aren't just symbolic gestures.
Right.
These have real consequences.
You do.
Yeah.
And I think, Raven's weakened state and Morgaine's lingering effects really serve as this reminder that these practices demand a real investment of energy and can have these, tangible impacts on those who participate.
Within a cave, Morgaine participates in this very primal ritual.
Yeah.
And encounters the Horned One, who's described as this young, fair-skinned king, raising the question of why someone, not one of the little dark people, was chosen.
Right.
What do you make of that?
I mean, it's deeply symbolic, right? This union with the divine masculine principle in their tradition. But the description of him and that question of his origin introduce this element of mystery.
Yeah. Something's changing.
Is it changing? Are there traditions evolving?
Right.
Is there a specific reason for choosing someone from outside that expected lineage?
Yeah. And upon returning to Avalon by the lake, Morgaine experiences this moment of doubt about her power while summoning the mists.
Right.
And then the sound of church bells.
Yes.
Triggering these conflicted thoughts about chastity.
Yeah.
So clearly she's caught between these two worlds.
She is. That moment of doubt really highlights that internal struggle, right? She's dedicated to the Avalon traditions, yet that growing influence of Christian beliefs, symbolized by those, intrusive church bells, really creates a tension for her, particularly around sexuality and purity.
Right.
It underscores that challenge of maintaining her identity in a changing world.
And the power of harping in Avalon then stirs up all these deep emotions and memories for Morgaine, bringing tears. This realization of Vivian's aging and her own transformation.
Right.
And then this prophecy resurfaces about hating Vivian as much as loving her.
Right.
It adds such complexity to their relationship.
Yeah.
What do you think that foreshadows?
It's so rich with emotion.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that scene, the music acts as this powerful trigger.
Yeah.
Bringing to the surface, Morgaine's complex feelings about Vivian, about her own growth and the passage of time. And I think that prophecy really hints at, maybe a future conflict or a deep emotional rift between them.
Right.
That adds this layer of, tragic foreshadowing to their bond.
Vivian and Taliesin discuss Arthur as the prophesied king.
Yeah.
But Kevin expresses skepticism about this young ruler gaining acceptance from seasoned warriors.
Right.
Taliesin emphasizes Arthur's training and the influence of the full moon on his sense of destiny.
Right.
So it's this fascinating interplay of practical concerns and mystical beliefs surrounding his rise to power.
It absolutely reveals that strategic thinking, behind his ascent.
Right.
The efforts of Vivian and Taliesin to legitimize his claim.
Right.
Kevin's skepticism, I think, reflects those very real concerns of the experienced warriors who might doubt someone so young.
Right.
Taliesin's emphasis on both, practical training and celestial influences really underscores that blend of worldly preparation and mystical justification,
It's interesting. And then there's that moment where Igraine reacts so negatively to the crescent moon mark on Morgaine's brow, insisting that she do it to avoid giving offense at the nunnery.
Right.
And Morgaine just flat out refuses.
Yeah.
It really highlights this growing divide between mother and daughter, in terms of their spiritual allegiances.
Absolutely. It's a symbol of the widening chasm between their approaches.
Yeah.
Igraine's trying to navigate that dominant Christian society and Morgaine's unwavering in her commitment to Avalon.
Right.
That mark
is
a clear symbol of her devotion to the goddess. And her refusal to conceal it is a direct act of defiance.
Right.
A declaration of her true beliefs.
Yeah, and then this huge development.
Right.
Morgaine's sudden realization of her pregnancy after the ritual.
Yes.
Despite not consciously considering it. throws her life into turmoil.
Right.
And the fact that the conception was incestuous with her mother's son just adds this layer of profound complication.
Complication and secrecy.
Yeah. It's secrecy. This is big.
It is, this unexpected pregnancy creates this very personal crisis for her. The fact that it wasn't something she consciously considered really underscores her focus on that ritual itself.
Yeah.
Right? But that incestuous nature creates this taboo situation with immense, personal and moral weight.
Yeah.
It forces her into secrecy.
Right.
And just adds, this layer of profound complexity to her predicament.
Yeah, and then we see Morgause's forceful attempts to feed Morgaine, misunderstanding her aversion to the deer meat because of the Beltane ritual.
Yeah.
So it reveals this disconnect between them,
Yeah.
and how Morgause suspects that her distress stems from
Right.
a brutal encounter, not the ritual's significance.
Exactly.
They see the world so differently.
They do. It really highlights those fundamental differences in their worldview. Morgause is operating from this very pragmatic, maybe even cynical perspective.
Right.
And Morgause immediately jumps to this, physical explanation for her distress. Host speaker,